Come have a seat and sip some tea. It's tech, entertainment, and art.
Welcome to yet another edition of Tea Talk. We're going to keep going, everyone. We're here for the long haul. By the time you listen to this, we will already have well over 10 episodes.
If you're listening to this, we're more than likely dead.
Yes, and this is our final message to the world. But it will be a little bit useless because if Sean and I are dead, then all of you all listening would have been dead way before you guys. So kind of pointless, really. But anyway, thank you for listening to us. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your ears. Thank you for lending us your ears for an hour a week. We're gonna make sure to try and show you how much we appreciate you by throwing some really accurate informations to your faces and whatnot, and some funny stuff too.
Shout out to our
anyway.
episode one. Episode one's at about 200 listens combined with YouTube and
Wow.
So hey, it's doing pretty good.
Awesome. I'm glad. Okay, let's jump right into it. We have in our corrections. We don't really have. I don't think. Do you have any corrections, Sean?
No, I have none.
Okay, so I don't have a correction, but we do have we're gonna introduce a new format to the podcast. We're gonna simplify our podcast. You know, as you know, we don't really have to say this, but we're amateurs. This is just a hobby. So as we continue to record, we continue to understand the medium of podcast even better, and we don't always listen to our own episodes. I think that's a little bit overindulgent, but but actually not true. We should actually listen to some of our episodes to see if they're good.
Well, we edit the episodes, so I mean we are.
Yeah. So anyway, in the interest of simplifying the podcast, we're going to reduce the amount of sections that we have for the podcast because we realize that some of them are actually a little bit redundant. Like for example, we have our first section is what's on your mind, but then later we go to a section called what are you looking forward to, and things that you're looking forward to are things that are on your mind. So those two, at least those two, can be merged into one section. But anyway, the point is that we're going to have only two sections from now on. We're going to have what's on your mind and what are you doing. And that's pretty much what this podcast is going to be.
In addition to having corrections at the beginning and questions at the end if there's any questions.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So that's what this podcast is about, is really what it's on Sean and my mind, and what are we doing. That's really the two things. But we're also going to keep it to things related to technology, entertainment, and art, obviously. That's what the podcast is about. And then, the questions and corrections at the end and beginning. I don't know how I started with end there and then finished with beginning, but that's how I do it. I always keep it. I keep it. Keep it
spicy.
I keep it spicy, man. I don't like to be predictable. Okay, so let's begin with what's on your mind. I think that I said what was on my mind. I started last time, and I don't know. This is kind of I really can't keep track of who started it and who didn't or whatever. So we're just always gonna go with the flow. I'll go ahead and start with you, Sean.
Okay. Most of what I'm going to talk about today is a documentary. I love documentaries. I love them. Now, there's two documentaries that came out in 2018. One got way more publicity, at least from my perspective, than the other one. And they're both to do with rock climbing. Have you seen Free Solo, Abdiel?
Yes, I did. I saw it with my wife.
Did you like it?
My wife wanted to see it. Not particularly, to be honest.
Wow. Okay. Well, okay. For the audience, Free Solo, it follows someone who climbs a particular rock face in Yosemite. And free soloing, it's a term used in rock climbing where they don't use anything. They have no harnesses, no rope. They're just climbing with their hands and their feet and nothing else. Personally, I love that documentary. There's a scene in there where he's climbing, and it follows Alex Honnold in that movie. And
yeah. In that documentary, you mean?
Yeah. Now I'm questioning. I'm looking at my notes, and I think I might have mixed up the names. But anyway, it follows a climber.
Oh my goodness, Sean! I just told our audience that we're
know.
gonna give them some accurate information
I know,
straight to their ear holes.
But anyway, it follows a particular climber, and I'm shocked that you didn't like it, Abdel, because there's like the way it's filmed. I know this is true. The filmmaker was Jimmy Chin, and the way it's edited, and it follows this person who struggles with basically rock climbing and life. Like everything about himself is about rock climbing, but he's also trying to struggle like with a relationship and anyway, when he's actually climbing, when it gets to the climax of the movie, and this is all true, like this is all documented, they actually got the rights or permits to fly a drone at a national park, which is very difficult to do. And they're flying the drone, and they're following him up, and they have cameras already set, and he's going up and climbing. I mean, literally, his life is hanging by like the tip of his finger, literally, like at moments. But anyway, there's another documentary which follows another set of climbers. They're not free soloing. They're doing what's called free climbing. And this was on Netflix. It's called The Dawn Wall. And free climbing, you're climbing, so you're harnessed, you got your rope. I guess you're not harnessed, but you have your equipment. But you're actually climbing with unassisted by anything. So if you fall, wherever you've pre-hammered your stakes in and stuff, and your locks and you won't die. But
yeah.
You're not climbing like with a rope assisted. Like if you're in a gym, the rope's kind of helping you a little bit, or vice versa when they start at the top of the mountain, go down, and then climb up. So this one, I find this particular documentary, it's not as well filmed, and it spans a much longer period of time, and I could kind of tell like it doesn't have Jimmy Chin's like cinematic style, but the people it follows are way more like, I don't want to say interesting, but there's the main guy's story is so sad. It's he loses a finger.
Why is it so sad?
He loses a finger at one point.
How?
His main finger, like your index finger. This is your index finger, I think.
That's not my main finger, but okay.
It's not. But for a rock climber, this is like for a rock
my main
climber,
finger is my thumb, bro. That's the most important. That's my main man.
That's not even a finger.
There.
But anyway,
it's a thumb. That's right.
But anyway, he loses that, which is like that's like a runner losing his foot, right? Like that's like a big part of climbing.
Total disaster.
When he's younger, him and a group of climbers, they go hike at the Himalayas, and they're taken captive by terrorists. And when they do, so they're captive by terrorists for weeks or something like that. And
they're captured by terrorists. What?
Yeah, it's an insane story. I'm telling you, like he gets captured by terrorists, and
what do they terrorists want? what are they doing? Hey, we want you to climb our mosque.
No, they want to hold them hostage.
Okay.
So they held them hostage, and the terrorists get caught by like government, and the government's like shooting at them. They're going back and forth, back and forth. The terrorists escape with their hostages, and then they're basically climbing these rocks at a certain point. Like it's just a few terrorists, I think maybe 2 or 3. One splits off, so there's only like this one terrorist who is like holding these people hostage, and meanwhile they're like,
Oh,
trying to,
I thought you were gonna say that there was this one terrorist who was actually kind-hearted and was like starting to develop a relationship with the hostages. I thought this was gonna be one of those stories where
no, this
someone
is completely
changes.
different. So as they're climbing, they realize, like, obviously, like, these guys are professional climbers, right? They have the advantage. So they're thinking about how to kill him. So the main person this guy follows.
How are they recording all of this though?
Oh, this is not recorded.
Oh, okay.
They have some pictures of the terrorists that I guess they found through once, like, the government came in and raided their camps and stuff like that. But
just the usual.
This part's animated.
Oh, okay.
So you'll like it. You'll like that part.
Okay.
But
is it like claymation? Like, do they go real goofy with it?
No, it's like a black and white kind of animation.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what
more somber kind of animation.
Yeah, there you go. But anyway, so as they're climbing, he realizes this is his chance
to prove the terror is wrong.
No, to kill the terrorists.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And he pushes him over the mountain.
What?
Yeah.
So he actually kills a terrorist.
He kills him, and
while this took a wild turn.
And he's like 17 years old.
Wow.
So now they're like in this I don't want to say forest. They're like just stranded, right? And so now they're climbing. They're trying to get out. Now they're worried that the other terrorist that went the other direction, they might run into him. They're afraid that they might try to kill him. And anyway, they get out, they escape, but traumatized, right? Traumatized, and then
dude, I'm just thinking about it right now, and I'm getting the feels, dude.
Yeah, it's a good documentary. Then so in this group of people, right? That there's this main character and a girl, right? And they've already kind of have a relationship established.
Yeah, of course, you always need to have the romantic interest.
So as they grow older together, they're rock climbing, they have a relationship, they get married, and then she leaves him after 10 years of marriage.
Dude.
I mean, it's just like
jerk.
It's a heart-wrenching story, but and he accomplishes like this huge monumental task, and it's very overall rewarding. And so I guess my main point is like the Dawn Wall, I find
did she get the house and the kids?
I don't think so. I didn't go into details like that. Okay. But anyway, curious. The Dawn Wall, I find, although not as well done as Free Solo, I find that the two main characters, they're very more complementary to each other, and they kind of come across each other, these two guys, like at very interesting points in their lives, and they become good friends. And
were the two guys also were they hostages together?
No, only one of them was.
Only one. Oh, okay.
Yeah. The other guy kind of comes into this guy's life when his wife leaves, and he's like, he's
a total bro.
Yeah, it just like kind of helps carry his load a little bit. But anyway, so it was
figuratively and literally while they're climbing.
But the other guy's not. Anyway, I don't want to ruin the whole documentary, but it's good. I can't remember. I don't think there's cussing. If there is, it's bleeped out. So for the most part, I think it's good for families.
I know that Free Solo.
Yeah, go for it.
I know that Free Solo is on Disney Plus because it's National Geographic, I think, right?
I think so. I know at one point it was on Netflix, and I'm guessing it does follow. Maybe Disney bought the rights to it.
Let me see. I want to make sure that I could have sworn I saw it on Disney Plus. Yeah, it's on Disney Plus. It's on everything actually. Free Solo is, you can rent it on YouTube, you can rent it on Google Play, Vudu, you can rent it on Amazon. But the only two subscription services that have it right now, it's Hulu and Disney.
Yeah, okay, and I was right. Free Solo is about Alex Honnold. I don't know if I'm saying his name
okay,
right.
So it's not about Han Solo. It's not a documentary about Han Solo.
No. Is that why is that why you were disappointed, Abdiel?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so interesting. I just saw that the documentary, it's in both Disney Plus and Hulu. and this is an opportunity to educate our audience. Do you know why Hulu has it as well?
Was Hulu bought by Disney at one point?
No, Hulu was made by Disney and a few other companies.
Oh.
Hulu was a conglomerate of companies that decided to start their own subscription service. And Disney, I think, is the biggest. Holds like the biggest shares on Hulu. But like a whole bunch of companies are merged together and they're working with Hulu.
So it's a little bit like Dasani and Pepsi or Coca-Cola. No, Dasani and Coca-Cola.
What happened?
You know, people who are like, oh, I don't drink any soda. I don't support the soda companies. I drink Dasani. And then like they realize that Dasani is like owned by Coca-Cola.
Yeah, because Coca-Cola. But I mean, Coca-Cola, I think they were on a quest to buy every soda in the world.
Yeah.
And there's only actually a handful of soda companies that are not owned by soda. I mean, by Coca-Cola.
It's unanimous.
But it's not quite like that. Hulu was more I don't know who started it, who had the idea or whatever, but it was something where someone maybe from Disney or I don't know who approached all the other companies and were like, hey, the future is streaming. We gotta unite and make this streaming company to be able to compete against Netflix and all that. And at the time, none of those companies had their own subscription service. So they were all like, okay, we'll support you and we'll give you some of our shows content. And we'll make them available. But then, so when Disney announced Disney Plus, people were wondering what was going to happen with Hulu. Because Disney is a big part of Hulu. But I think they're still in cahoots with Hulu. But they just have less things, less content there, and more on Disney Plus.
I don't know. I feel like Disney's not a big part of Hulu. Like I don't go on Hulu to watch.
Yeah.
I go on Hulu to watch, but you know what? They own ESPN, so I guess it is kind of like a part of it. And
yeah,
I'm more about if I'm going on Hulu, I want to watch a basketball game. I want to watch a football game. But what's on your mind, Abdiel?
Before I moved to what's on my mind, since you brought up the subject of documentaries, I was thinking about documentaries the other day because there's this guy. Let me look for him real quick. There's this guy called Albert Lin, and he's do you know him?
No, I just was saying yes.
Okay, I was like, man, you're buddies with him? Oh, wow. But anyway, so he works for the National Geographic, which is owned by Disney, and Disney Plus has a section for that. So his documentaries are on Disney Plus, and he does kind of like archaeological documentary stuff. So really interesting stuff. But anyway, it's something funny that came to my mind because he goes to like one of the documentaries, for example, is an underground Templar cave. And so he goes to this like ancient archaeological sites that are like thousands of years old. And he uses different technology to kind of research the area. But what I think is funny about it is like that he goes to the place and he's like, whoa, underground temple, 1,000 years old. We're gonna see, we got satellites, we got engineers, we got computers, we got all this technology. We're gonna find out the evidence. And then it's like, turns out there's no evidence left. It was all disintegrated. But with our satellites, with our engineers and computers, we're going to sort of pretend we found some evidence, and we're gonna talk to you about it. And then it's like, oh, we found for reals this time. We found some like legit evidence, but it turns out it's below a building, and the owners of the building don't really want us to check it. So we got satellites, we got engineers, we got computers. We're gonna take pictures, and it's kind of like that. Where anyway, I just thought it was funny that all the documentary is more about like the technology and stuff like that, and very not so much about the evidence.
What's actually happening? Yeah,
it's so unreachable or so old, and there's like barely any. And they're just trying they're just really grasping at straws.
It's
anyway,
so fun,
but that's just my opinion.
No, it's so funny you say that. I mean, we're diverting from, but so much of the information presented out there nowadays, and even when we were growing up, it's just not true. Like you know, a lot of the information that like it's speculative, and then speculative become fact, and then fact becomes like taught to the masses, and then masses believe it, and it's just interesting how like you just have to be very wary of where we're gathering information from.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Moving on. So what's on my mind? What's on my mind? It's drawing tablets with screen. Yeah, I think that's how you describe those objects. It's a display that you hook up to your computer that you can also draw on. You know what I'm talking about, Sean?
Like there's a
Wacom
word for
tablet.
it, right? Isn't it a what?
Well, it's called a pen tablet, I guess you could call it.
Say it again. A penta?
A pen tablet.
Okay.
Or a tablet display, I guess you could also. I actually, what's the actual general name for it? I don't know. People just call them Wacoms because for the longest time,
Yeah, there you go.
Wacom was Wacom is the brand.
Okay.
It's not. Yeah, it's kind of one of those. It's one of those things where there's only one brand, so you call it by the brand instead of what the actual object it's actually called. But anyway, so for all of the audience out there that might not be familiar with what a drawing or a pen tablet is, because today we have actual iPads and other tablets that's what we associate tablet with, but that wasn't always the case. But anyway, it is sort of like it looks like what an iPad looks like, but it's not standalone. You have to hook it up to your computer, and then it displays. It's like an external monitor for your computer. It's just like another monitor. It displays exactly what's being displayed on your monitor of your computer, except that it comes with a pen and you can draw on it, and it has multiple features that make it really nice to draw on. So it's not like your mouse. Instead of using a mouse, you're using a pen. No, the pen has sensitivity to it. The pen has angles to that depending on the angle that you draw on, it'll cause a different reaction depending on the program that you're using and whatnot. But anyway, it's a tool that is made specifically for designers or people that draw. So it's not necessarily a super well-known tool because unless you are in the field of art or design, you probably would have no use for a tool like that. Even though some people actually prefer it to a mouse. I know that editors for movies and films prefer to use a pen for editing than a mouse because it's more ergonomic. The way that you hold a pen and the way that you hold a mouse, holding a pen is actually more ergonomic.
Okay, can I stop you real quick, Abdiel?
Absolutely.
So I have two questions. First,
yeah.
I have the Microsoft Pro, and I have the pen with it, and like they'll show like on their commercials.
You mean Microsoft Surface Pro?
I'm sorry, yes, Surface Pro.
Okay.
And I have the pen with it, and I've used it for writing and stuff, and it's good. But I also wonder, like they in a lot of their commercials, they'll show people who, I'm an artist and I have my own production company and I draw and then they'll show they're drawing on the Surface Pro. Do artists use it? Really? Do they use the Surface Pro, or is the certain brand more is what they use? Like,
yeah. So that's a very good question. So do artists use it? Yeah, they do. If Microsoft is trying to appeal to those artists, and I'm sure someone does. It's the same thing with the iPad. The iPad Pro now, or any iPad, but the iPad Pro it's more useful to designers because it's bigger. But the iPad Pro with the pen, the actual Apple pen, that is really, really good. And you combine those two tools with a software called Procreate, and people can do really, really good drawings. And drawing with the iPad, the pen, and the Procreate software provides an experience that is very similar to our drawing on paper. It's even better than drawing on paper. Actually, I think it feels better than drawing on paper. And so a lot of artists are actually using that setup. a lot, and you go to YouTube and you see a lot of professionals in the industry, and they're using that setup. Maybe not to actually work on their final product, but to sketch and to come up with ideas,
Storyboarding.
yeah, storyboarding, things like that. So I'm guessing the Surface Pro can be used in a similar fashion, but it's not as good, probably not as good as using an iPad with Procreate and the Apple Pen.
I don't know. I would be hard pressed. I'm not a drawing artist, but I would be hard pressed to find one that works better than this. From the reviews I read, and I do see on YouTube people use this, but because from what I understanding is Apple kind of bit off of Microsoft's pen a little bit.
Yeah, maybe. So can you, for example, do that thing where you lay the pen flat and you go like that, and it creates like a
like a shading,
like a shading? Can you do that with your pen?
I haven't tried. It's possible.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if that's a pen thing or a more of a software thing, but you can definitely do that with the Procreate and an iPad Pro. Okay. And yeah, you can really play with the angle of the pen. But another thing, and this is a little bit more technical artist stuff, but many artists use charcoal, and charcoal is like a piece of it's like a black piece of carbon that you hold, and it's a lot like a chalk, piece of chalk.
Yeah,
I think I'm saying the same thing over. But the one that we use for the chalkboard, the white that they use for a chalkboard. But this one is black. And anyway, so a lot of people prefer to use that piece of black chalk because it's just like a square, and it has a lot of different surfaces. Like it'll have because it's a rectangle. I'm sorry, it's a square rectangle kind of thing, a 3D rectangle. It has many different surfaces. I'm having so much trouble describing this stuff.
It's like you're describing an eraser to everybody. Like we know what it is, though.
Yeah, you know what? I'm sorry. So it has many different surfaces, and artists really like that. Like it'll have a sharp surface, it'll have a flat surface, it'll have a long surface if you lay it on the side. They have all these uses, and artists really like using that. I don't like using that because I'm not a traditional artist. But anyway, I know that with Procreate. And the Apple Pen, it can simulate using a piece of chalk like that really nicely. Anyway, I'm really getting really off track here. But anyway,
it's funny. So, you mentioned that, and I just remembered like a random memory that I took an art class actually when I was like in second grade or first grade or something. It was like a summer class, and looking back, I realize now my parents probably just wanted me out of the house, but.
Yeah,
but and we use that chalk to like draw, and he had this weird rule that you couldn't look at your paper when you were drawing. You had to look at your subject and just draw and never look at your paper. It's such a strange rule. I always felt like,
I wonder if that was just an exercise though.
I think it was an exercise, but it became like the class. Like you couldn't look at what you were drawing, and it was like I don't know. I just feel like it was weird. It was a very weird thing.
Okay. Well, so I'm doing a lot of drawing now, because I have time and the situation. We're still on lockdown here because of the corona, and another because I want to draw more for the podcast, and I want to do some like 2D animation and do some, instead of using the pixelated designs that we've been using so far for the promo art, I want to do more traditional drawings. And just because I like the hobby of drawing, and I think I describe it to people as kind of like playing a guitar. You don't necessarily learn how to play a guitar because you want to be a musician professionally. You just do it because it's nice. It's a nice pastime. It's a nice productive hobby, and it's just fun, perhaps. So that's why I'm getting more into drawing because of that. I've really been enjoying it a lot. But I've been using my 10-year-old Wacom bamboo tablet, which works perfectly. It works just as good as when I bought it for the first time, and that's quite an achievement because it's not just a testament to the quality of the tablet, but also the quality of the software that still works perfectly with 10 years after those. They're still updating the drivers, and the drivers work great with Windows 10. So that's fantastic.
It's so funny.
But anyway,
I'm trying to think of what like anything else that has lasted 10 years.
it's very hard. Yes, I was just thinking about that as I was thinking, writing down the outline and thinking what I'm going to say in the podcast. I was like, this is probably the oldest piece of technology that I own. But you know what? I'm going to give you one thing though. I do have a PS1 that is definitely older. It's 20 more than it came out in '97, I think, PS1. So that's older, and I have a PS1 that does still work. Last time I checked.
Well, yeah, no, but like not just work, but is also mainstream. You know what I mean? Like they're still using it. Mm-hmm. They're still updating. No one's updating a PS1. You know, to
that. Oh, okay, yeah, that you're right about that.
Like, man, that's incredible.
Yeah, so it really is. It really is a testament to the company, to Wacom, even though they're getting a lot of shade because the competition is coming up with some really good stuff, and we're gonna get into that. But anyway, I was using I've been using that tablet, which, like I said, works fine, and I've actually been able to improve a lot in the recent days that I've been actually more seriously trying to learn how to draw by looking at tutorials and reading books. But I want to upgrade. I want a tablet with a display on it. The bamboo tablet that I have right now doesn't have a display. It's just this black board. People that are familiarized with this kind of tablets know exactly what I'm talking about. But it doesn't have a display. The way that you draw, it's by you have to look at your computer monitor while you're drawing on this tablet. So usually when we draw, we're used to looking at the paper, right? So yeah. It has to do a little bit with what your teacher was telling you of not looking at the paper while you're drawing, where you're actually not looking at the tablet while you're drawing, but you are looking at what you're drawing because what you're drawing is being presented to you on your tablet. I mean, on your screen, or on your computer screen. At first, that sounds weird and not intuitive, and at first it is. But after you get used to it, I almost like it better than drawing on a piece of paper, because now when I draw on a piece of paper, I feel like my hand is on the way. Like I can look beneath my hand.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
But when I draw on the computer, nothing is blocking my view there, so I can see it like perfectly. I still prefer to sketch on a piece of paper because it just feels nicer. But anyway, so I wanna get a tablet with a screen. So I've been doing some research. I did about 6 hours of research to see which tablet I wanted to get, because it's quite an investment. It's a few $100 investment, and I knew that Wacom it's really good. And the university that I work in, the Academy of Art University, they only have Wacoms. They have Cintiqs, which is one of the models of Wacom, the more higher end. And so I know how that works, but I wanted to see the competition, because the competition is coming up with some really good stuff, and the price is much less. But anyway, I did about 6 hours of research the day like 2 days ago, and I want to share that real quick with our audience and also share with you, Sean, and see what you think about that. So there are four major brands right now. If you go to Amazon and you type screen drawing display, you'll find 4 brands: XP Pen, Huion, Gaomon, and Wacom. Those are the 4 main ones. I did not research Gaomon at all, because Gaomon was priced around the same as Wacom, and it's not a brand that I know. So why am I gonna pay the same thing that I pay for Wacom
that you've never even heard of
for a brand that I haven't even heard of? And this is not this type of technology, and a lot of computer technology. You can say the same thing. A lot of digital technology. When you're talking about a tablet like this, you might say, well, Gammon might be, if they're charging you as much as Wacom, they might be just as good. It's like, well, they might, but talking about drivers and a tablet that have all this much functionality, you're talking about a very complicated process, and I don't know if you want to risk it with a company that you don't know. I don't know, but maybe trying it might be really rewarding. But one thing I can tell you though is that I talked about the drivers. All these tablets have their own drivers, and you cannot have multiple drivers on your computer. So if you have Wacom drivers and you want to install a Huon, you have to delete your Wacom drivers and install the Huon drivers. They don't work with each other. Not only they don't work with each other, which that makes sense. I mean, of course, they're not going to work with each other because these companies are not going to support each other.
Right.
But also, you have to delete the competitors' drivers.
That's
so you
crazy.
can't use multiple brands at the same time on one computer.
That seems like illegal almost.
Well, yeah, I don't know about that. They probably have some good technical reasons, but anyway, be right back. I'm talking a lot and I need water. 1 second.
I might as well get some water too. 1 sec.
So yeah. So anyway, so I'm researching and I'm leaning towards getting a Huon or a XP pen, but more specifically, I'm leaning toward a Huon. So what I did is that I read a few websites. I read CNET, which is kind of like the website that you want to look for when you buy electronic stuff.
Uh-huh.
And I saw reviews on YouTube. And ultimately, long story short, I decided to go with the Wacom. But I'm gonna explain why. So the three entry levels.
What's your price? What's your price points, Abdiel?
Yeah, I'm gonna say that.
Okay.
Right now. So for the entry level tablets that I was researching for, the price points are like this. The entry level screen display tablet for XP Pen is $250. The Huon and it's called XP Pen Artist 12. For Huon, it's called the Huon Canvas Pro 13 and it's $300. And for Wacom, it's called the Wacom 1 for $400.
Oh, okay.
So $250, $300, and $400. So, and these are sort of the those were my four options. So I was interested in researching XP Pen and Huon because I'm saving quite a bit of money. And I want to talk about the specs a little bit of them because I think it's interesting. For the XP Pen, it's an 11-inch screen, and the pen has 8,000 levels of sensitivity, and it has 6 shortcut keys and a touch bar. For the Huon Canvas Pro 13, it has a 13-inch screen. It's full laminated, and I'm going to explain what that is later. It has a pen with 8,000 levels of sensitivity, 4 shortcut keys and a touch bar, and 120% sRGB wide gamut. The XP Pen has a 72% NTCS color gamut, which is the equivalent of 100% sRGB. So that's basically, when we're talking about color gamut, we're talking about the entire range of colors and tones achievable by an image system. So the higher the percentage, the more the colors. However, that's not a big deal. These numbers that the XP Pen and the Huon are sort of boasting, though they don't really make such a big difference. But anyway, the ultimately they're all pretty much the same. The one that has the biggest difference comes with the Huon Canvas Pro 13 that has a fully laminated display, which means that the display where you draw on and the screen where you draw on and the display are really close to each other. So why is that important? Because on a tablet like XP Pen Artist 12 or the Wacom 1, there's a little bit of air. There's this gap between the screen where you draw and the display screen, and that air gap makes it so that when when you touch down on the screen to draw, the cursor that actually comes up, it's like moved to the side a few millimeters. So it's not very intuitive because you can't
Oh,
you
okay.
can't actually draw on the screen that is displaying the image. You have to draw on a, I think that's called, the screen where you draw on is called a, I forgot the name, what that's called.
Is it so? That's not a desired effect. You don't want.
Yeah, you would prefer a fully laminated display. So the Huon Canvas Pro 13 has the full laminated display, meaning there's very little air, a very little air gap between the touch screen and the display screen. And the Wacom One, that's $100 more expensive, does not have a laminated display, meaning that the air gap between those two screens is a little bit wider, meaning that the drawing experience will not be as intuitive.
Yeah.
Though the difference is not that much, but it's enough to be noticed. So I was thinking, man, which one of the two should I go with? I ended up going with the Wacom One for different reasons. Because I already have a Wacom, I have all the drivers, and it's lasted me for a long time. I know that their equipment is reliable. It's well built, and it's very slick looking, and I am a sucker for that as well. And the other thing why I didn't go with the Huon's Canvas Pro is because their stuff is not as durable from what I gather online. Their tablets tend to break, and the cable tends to break a lot.
Yeah.
The cable that connects your tablet to your computer, because it's quite the cable. It's a cable that it's an all-in-one cable that has USB, HDMI, and some other slot. I can't even remember what the other slot was. And it's one of those three cables break.
For our listeners, Abdil is saying slot, not slut.
Slot. That's right. Slot with an O. No, not with an U.
It's got some other slut. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, so that cable is expensive. It costs $50, and it tends to break a lot. This one YouTuber that I follow said that in 6 months she had to buy 3 cables. In 2 years, she had spent more than $200 buying cables for the Huon Canvas Pro.
That's crazy.
So I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna risk. And I know that stuff like that doesn't really happen to everyone, but I'm not gonna risk
No,
that.
no.
I'm gonna go with a reliable brand in this case, the one that's already been tested. So yeah. So anyway, I invested the $400 on the Wacom One. It arrives today. So
Ooh, that's exciting.
Yeah, I'm super excited for it. Yeah, really, really excited. Next week, I'm gonna talk about, maybe give a little bit of a review for it, and also talk about what I'm doing to get better at drawing. And by the time you listen to this, you're actually gonna start seeing some of those drawings on our Instagram. I'm gonna post them on Twitter as well. So yeah, look forward to that. My drawings are getting like exponentially better from what I showed you first to what I've been doing now. It's like totally different quality.
I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, for a few reasons. There's like 2 things that I changed about how I've been drawing that have made my drawings much better. But I'm going to talk about that on our next episode when I talk more about the Wacom One.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, that was a little bit verbose there of a section. I hope that what I said made some sense for our audience, and it's helpful to those in our audience who are also interested in drawing and buying a tablet.
I think everyone likes a good tech review.
Yeah. Anyway, so now we move on to the next part, to what are we doing? So Sean, tell me, what are you doing?
Okay, I got 2 things for the audience. First, my wife and I watched the prequel trilogy of Star Wars. She had seen it, but not really paid a lot of attention to it when they first came out. And so we watched them again, and she really couldn't remember a lot of the details or what was really even happening. And I don't even know if she saw all of them, but she liked them. You know, she went back, and it's funny. She like pointed out some interesting things that it's good to have like I think if my wife was to ever direct a movie, I think she'd do a good job. Like I'm all for like women in film and stuff, and she pointed out things that I I had never even noticed before. Like, for example, when Anakin and Padme are like traveling, like they have all this technology around them, right? And they're still using like Samsonite briefcases, and they're like carrying them on rollers. She's like, all this technology, and they still have like a Samsonite briefcase. I've never noticed that. Set design. If she was ever to get in set design, she would do like a fantastic job. When we do interviews with like business people, I completely trust her eye, because like I'll miss things, like if someone has something in their pocket or whatever, and as far as set design, she's really good at noticing those kind of things. And then she mentioned something else that I had never noticed before either. In episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, right? There's the opening scene where they like save the Chancellor, quote unquote, save the Chancellor, and then they find a landing strip. And she's like, when have they ever used a landing strip for any of these spaceships? They always...
What's the landing strip?
Like when an airplane goes, when you land on the landing strip, the airplane lands on it. The tarmac.
Yeah. So I know.
And it goes for like hundreds and hundreds of feet, like miles to land, right?
Yeah.
But never in Star Wars had that ever happened before. They always came,
just land
and hovered and landed.
Yeah, exactly.
No matter what the size of the ship was. So where did that tarmac come from? When had that ever been introduced in Star Wars? And I was like, oh man, that's a really good point too. I never thought about that.
Huh. Maybe it's because the ship that they were using is a special kind of ship. I don't know. It's
but
really fast.
It's just like smaller holes, right? I thought they were interesting. But something I noticed, and I hadn't watched the prequels in quite a long time. Keep in mind, George Lucas had not directed a movie in 22 years since he directed The Phantom Menace, right? And I've noticed in The Phantom Menace, there's not very many cinematic shots. In other words, like the shots, they're like landscape. They're all landscape shots virtually. Like everything is in focus. It's infinity focus forever. There's no depth of field, which I understand because before he really couldn't show a lot of like his world because you would then see like it was a cheap prop or maybe the puppet looked a little funny in a certain angle or whatever. But like everything is in focus all the time. Very rarely do you ever get like a very close up, an extreme close up. And as the movies progressed in the second and third one, you get more cinematic shots. Like the only real cinematic shot I can even remember where not everything is in focus in the first one is when Qui-Gon Jinn is thinking about Anakin Skywalker and the family, and like he's sitting at that table and they do like a close up of him and he's like pondering, and that's the only that's the only thing that stands out in my mind. And all the other times everything's in focus. Like you don't have any like cinematic blurred effects. The cuts follow like a sequential line of thought, but there's no like, and then that as the other movies develop, it gets better. And another thing she noticed was the CGI, which everyone's talked about for many, many years. But I can understand now, realizing George Lucas, how much he developed that field, how much he probably wanted to introduce that into into the cinematic world. Like, he had spent so much time paying people to develop technology that by the time Phantom Menace came around, like he really relied heavily, and then the next two movies relied heavily on animation, and it just really wasn't quite up to snuff as to what we like. But anyway,
yeah. What you were saying about George Lucas not being very cinematic in the first movie, it just brought to my mind. He's kind of like the anti. What you were saying sounds like he's sort of the anti Zack Snyder, where every single shot is cinematic, and by the end of it, you're just like, you're just fatigued because everything is stylized and everything is cinematic.
Yeah,
we talk trash. We talk a lot of trash about Zack Snyder, but that means something though. That means,
I guess,
I kind of have a crush on Zack Snyder.
I wish I was given the opportunity Zack Snyder was. Like, I mean, I just feel like his stories are not. He could work on his storytelling. That's where I feel he falls short. But anyway,
Yeah.
the second thing I want to talk about, which is completely different, unless you had something else to talk about Star Wars.
No, I can always talk about Star Wars. We have recently the season 7 of Clone Wars just finished, and that was very awesome, very cinematic. You were That's another thing that came to my mind when you talked about cinematic. There's a scene where Ahsoka is talking with Darth Maul at the Mandalorian throne room, and there's a war going on outside.
Yeah.
And that entire scene was so cinematic, especially in the moment where there was an explosion outside and it breaks the glass, and all of the glass particles just fly inside the room, and there's glass, there's smoke, there's sparks, sort of a lot of what's that called, dynamic simulation,
Right.
and it looks so good. That part was so powerful, and the entire thing is so good. And yeah, so those the last 4 episodes of season 7 are like their own standalone movie. I would say. So I really recommend that. I actually did not watch any of season 7 except those
last 4
last episodes. Yeah.
You really don't need to. The other episodes are like, they just drag on.
Yeah.
The next thing I want to talk about,
Yeah.
was another documentary called The Last Dance, and it's not about dancing. It follows Michael Jordan in the 1998 NBA season, and the Bulls, Chicago Bulls. I don't know how much you're into basketball, Abdiel, but you know Michael Jordan, right? Do you know Michael Jordan?
Of course, yeah. Who doesn't know him?
So he
Mostly, I know Michael Jordan mostly because of Space Jam.
Okay. Well, if you don't know, he's arguably probably one of the best single basketball players, like one-on-one.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But it follows this. The documentary is very interesting because it follows 1 year of 1998, but there's a lot of time jumps back and forth, and the way they do it is very interesting. Like, for example, they'll go in 1998, which that season for the Chicago Bulls was filled with drama between the players and the organization and money, and oh man, it was just like drama. If you know,
Good stuff for a movie.
Yeah, I mean,
material. Good material for a documentary.
Yeah, it was so good. And then so they go back. Shout out to Puerto Rico, for example. I'll give you a little example. Phil, the coach, he started out coaching in different areas, and one of the places he coached in was Puerto Rico. And that's kind of where he kind of really got his coaching chops in, and he talks a little bit about it. But it'll go from 1998, something that happened in 1998, back to like 1964 when Phil was coaching in Puerto Rico, and kind of taught him a lesson about this, and it goes back to like 1998 where he works on this and deals with this situation. And I just thought it was so interesting how it's done. And it's a 10-part series. They're releasing 2 episodes every Sunday on ESPN, so if you have Hulu Live, you can watch it. So the next 2 episodes will be coming out this Sunday, and then finally the Sunday after this, which is May 15th, I think, or May 17th, the final 2 episodes will be released. And there has been a little bit of drama with this. Isaiah Thomas, who was kind of like, you could call him, like, before Michael Jordan, he was kind of like the leader of the league, and Michael Jordan kind of usurped him. There was like a little drama in the news and stuff with them too, like kind of a little back and forth. So even drama nowadays. The documentary is bleeped out, so there's no cussing, but you can, like, the bleeping's not the greatest. You can still kind of understand what they're saying, So just a heads up on that for any families who are looking to watch that. But it's a very well filmed, very well edited documentary.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that sounds fun. It's always good to see stuff that Michael Jordan is in, because he's a little bit of an entertainer.
Oh yeah.
And So it's fun to watch Michael Jordan.
I don't know how accurate these statistics are, but I think, for example, he made like $100 million from playing basketball. From his shoes, he's made billions of dollars.
Yeah. Someone said a while ago that the Jordan brand is basically the only brand that has never gone out of style. Like, Jordan brand is just, everyone still wants Jordans.
Yeah.
No. There's never been a time where people did not want to buy Jordans. I don't know if that even makes sense, but that just kind of is interesting to me because I'm not into shoes that much, but people that are always talking about Jordans, and it's like they've been talking about getting the Jordans for my entire life, 29 years. I've been hearing people about buying Jordans, and it's like it's the only brand that I see people being so enthusiastic about getting, and it's never stopped.
No, I don't think it will.
So it's interesting how a little bit of advertisement can go a long way, basically, because I think the Jordan brand and Jordan himself became so big as a sportsman because not just because of how good he was, but probably because of how the NBA advertised him.
It's funny that when he signed with Nike, he did not want to sign with Nike. And he actually wanted to sign with Adidas because at the time Nike was like nobody knew what Nike was except for like runners. And his mom told him, "You're gonna go meet them. At the very least, you are gonna go meet them and see what they have to say." And then the rest is history.
Well, I feel like there's much of the story there, but now I'm interested on what did Nike do.
You have to watch it.
Okay. So now moving on. Now what I am doing. So I thought that for this section, I wanted to let the audience know a little bit about what my wife and I have been doing during this lockdown. We've been in lockdown for a while now, and we've had to get creative in some ways to be entertained and to exercise and whatnot. And I already talked about flu ball, but I wanted to just give people a rundown of what we do on our day to day. I guess that's not true, but it's a lot that we've been doing a lot of different things every day, really. But there's some things that have been consistent. So that's what I wanted to talk about. So we've been rewatching Parks and Recreation. Really funny show. It's a lot like The Office, but I think it's more. It has a wider appeal to it. Have you seen Parks and Rec, Sean?
Yeah, and it's funny as you say that. I'm wondering why it has a wider appeal. Maybe because it's like government interaction with like the public and stuff.
Yeah. Well, the jokes are not as edgy as the one in The Office. Really, Michael Scott or the writers, not Michael Scott, but the writers of that show were pretty irreverent, and they did not care about who they were offending. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's funny you say that in an interview. Who plays Michael Scott? I'm trying to remember right now.
Steve Carell.
Steve Carell. He says in an interview that like if that were to come out today,
it would not fly.
It wouldn't fly. Yeah, it wouldn't get picked up.
Yeah. So Parks and Rec is much more politically correct. I don't know if that what you were trying to say earlier, but it definitely is. So I think that's why it has a wider appeal. But anyway, that's not to take from it. Nowadays, if you say that something is politically correct, then that's almost like an insult. But that's not the case with Parks and Recreation. It's really funny. There's really good writing, really good acting, a really good character-driven story. It's really nice, really funny. So we've been rewatching that. My wife has been playing a lot of Animal Crossing. Animal Crossing is a very interesting game. I think it's the only game that I've ever played in my life that is so wholesome, where I don't think absolutely anyone would be offended. Though doesn't matter what religion you practice, what political affiliation you have. It
looks so cute. I'm looking at pictures of it right now.
Yeah, it has like it's just a game about living in an island, cultivating the island, building your house, um, building your furniture, you decorating your house, talking to your neighbors, helping your neighbors out, and that's it. That's the game. And fishing and doing things related to like growing a piece of land and cultivating a piece of land. And then each person has their own island, and you can visit other people's island online and help them in their island, or also just cause some havoc. You can ruin their flowers if you want, if you're a jerk. But it's also a really deep game. There's a lot to do. There's a lot of animals in the game that you can capture. You can open up a museum and put the animals in the museum. The museum in the game is like legit. It looks really nice and it's really big. The animals that you capture, they give you interesting tidbits on the animals. I've learned a few things about certain animals, why they do certain things. I'm trying to think of an example. I guess I really haven't learned anything. Man, I'm trying to think of an example now.
The audience,
but anyway,
we believe you, Abdiel. We believe you.
You also dig up fossils, and the fossils are about dinosaurs and are dinosaur fossils, obviously, and they also explain to you what some interesting tidbits also on the whatever the dinosaur was. Like there's this one dinosaur that has scales that are made of bones all over his body, and they don't know how the scales grew exactly, but all they know is that the dinosaur was covered in this bone like scales. I forgot what the dinosaur's name even was, so that's not very helpful. But
what's the platform on this game? Is it a
Nintendo Switch? It's a Nintendo exclusive game. It's internally developed by Nintendo.
Okay.
So in the game, so you create your character. My wife created her character, and you can also live on the other of another person's island. So I live on my wife's island. Have my own house. And yeah. Anyway, it's just we have different houses. We can't. It's a Nintendo game. It's a game for kids. Like I said, it's a very wholesome game. So you can't get married in the game. Otherwise, we would have. We would have if you could. So yeah. But mostly my wife has been playing that, and then I've been playing Just Dance with my wife for exercise. So there's a lot of dances in that game, mostly for women. So I've been doing those dances as well. So it's hilarious. But all of you that know me, I'm a goofball, so I have no problem doing those dances. We do it not mostly, but mainly for exercises. You can, in the game, it allows you to initiate a calorie burning, I think it's called sweat mode. And when you activate sweat mode, it will sort of give you a playlist, and it will tell you exactly how many calories you're burning.
Okay.
Because you're holding a controller, and the controller keeps track of how much movement you're doing. And it's interesting how my wife and I would do the same dances, right? Because you both do the same dances. It's not like you can do different dances at the same time. That wouldn't make any sense. However, I was burning more calories than my wife, which means that I was moving more. So that I thought that was interesting and funny, and it's cool too how it keeps track of that. So essentially, burning calories, it turns it into a little bit of a competition. So that's fun because it motivates people to move more. Yeah. I guess. We've been playing flu ball as it's handball. It's a small handball sort of alternative that I've described before. And then I've been playing a lot of Final Fantasy VII, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit. I've been playing the original Final Fantasy VII.
Not the remake one? Not the one that was remade?
So I finished the remake. And it was great. But I don't want to talk about that too much. Maybe I'll talk about it some other time I've been meaning of doing like a podcast review or something like that, and just releasing it through T-Talk Plus. But anyway, what I wanted to mention about Final Fantasy VII is because I've been replaying it, the original that came out in 1997 and the PS1, and it's very interesting because I didn't play it back then, so I don't know much about it, but I'm playing it now. and it was really ahead of its time. And I wanted to see what you thought about that. Well, first off, I've talked a lot about different things. Do you have anything to say about the other things?
No, no.
No. Okay. So what's interesting is that this is a game. The story of the game. I just want to focus on the story of the game. It starts by a company called Shinra, literally called Shinra Power Company, or no, Shinra Electric Company, I think it's called. Yeah. It's a company that has become an empire that rules the world. This is very usual. This is something that's very prevalent in cyberpunk stories. Cyberpunk stories are sci-fi stories that often make the bold prediction that in the future the world will be ruled by companies. This is something that we even see today, how the government and many companies are at odds, and governments are often trying to not sort of stand in the way of companies attaining power in certain areas. And you can actually see that in Parks and Recreation, where there's a company in the area that they live. I forgot do you remember the?
Yeah, it's like
do you remember?
It's like they have a health.
It's
bar,
called
right?
Sweetums.
Sweetums,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's like
The company is called
super
Sweetums, and the company they often talk about how that company essentially owns the area.
Yeah.
For different reasons, because of jobs and the amount of money that they deal with. But anyway, so this Shinra company has become a world empire, and they are not only are they destroying the planet, but they are an oppressive regime as well. So there's the rebel group called Avalanche that is trying to bring this group, the company, down. Very similar to how Star Wars is. Very similar sort of pace and story beats. But then it turns out it doesn't end there, Sean. Then the planet, you discover that the planet a long time ago was invaded by an alien entity that wants to destroy the planet. So forget about the company. Now there's an alien that wants to. There's this alien that wants to destroy the planet, but the planet defended itself by creating this kaiju style monster, giant monsters, same things that you would see in something like Godzilla.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. Like, I don't even have to describe it. It's, like, one of them, it actually looks like Godzilla, except it's black instead of green. And so now those, after Shinra is doing this thing, you're trying to bring it down. You learn that you're learning that this happened. I'm trying to kind of put my head around it, because it's such an epic story. It's the point I'm trying to make. So eventually, those monsters, they're called Weapon. Really, that's their actual name, with a capital W. It's called Weapon, and there's multiple of them. So now they're on a rampage, and they're trying to destroy not Shinra, but they're trying to destroy this alien entity that was asleep and now has woken up. But to destroy the alien entity, these weapons are also harming the population. So, and they're bad, and they actually need to be destroyed ultimately. And Shinra is now fighting these monsters. And Shinra, even though it's an oppressive empire, becomes the only hope for the people. So I thought that was really interesting, the way that was. I didn't see that coming. Because they're like cartoony bad. That's how they were presented.
And then they turn good
in the story. And now they're still bad, but they're also the only hope that humans have.
Interesting. What a weird turn. When you first described it in a previous episode, I would have never imagined that it would go there. And that's where I think I lose a lot of myself in, like, that anime world where it's like,
yeah,
I don't know. It's just, I can't.
And then it doesn't end there.
Oh,
but wait,
goodness.
one more time. One more thing. It doesn't end there. So now you're fighting. There's the alien entity. There's the weapons. There's the company. But now the main character is dealing with some serious childhood trauma that you have to explore. Feelings of abandonment, feelings of shame, because he was he had goals in life that he wasn't able to achieve. then he's he joins this company he's experimented with. He's infused with this thing called Mako energy, and he's also infused with something with cells from the alien entity that fell ages ago, and he's been made into this mutant soldier. But then his memories were tempered with as well, and all of this trauma that he has, he's relieving it, and it's just sort of coming back and forth. So now you have to. There's a moment in the game. The reason why I said I have to talk about this is because the last thing that I played in the game is that there's a moment in the game where you explore you go real deep into his childhood trauma, and you go step by step, sort of the same way that a therapist does it, where the game is like, okay, let's go back to when you were a child. What happened? And one of the characters is literally asking Cloud, what happened? What do you remember? And he's like, well, when I was a child, this happened. And then the character and then the game takes you into that world. And you're now the child. You're the character, but you're a child, and you're going through what happened.
Walking through,
you're going through the motions.
Stuff.
You're walking through his home, his village, and then he starts remembering what's happening. He starts bringing these things out, and he starts understanding why he feels the way he feels. And eventually, you go through all of it. He remembers everything. His memories are back together, and his entire demeanor changes, and he becomes like a different character in terms of the personality. He goes from being like a quiet, very jerky, a jerk, to a more positive, and also a very negative person, to a more positive, more like, hey, let's just do this, guys. We can do it together. And so I'm like, one of the writers for this game absolutely had just gone through therapy, and he put it in the game. And he just put it like step by step how therapy works. I mean, I've never been to therapy, but I've seen YouTube videos about it, so I kind of know how they do it. Anyway, it's just such an interesting, like, I understand now why why that game is so important to a lot of people, and why it connected so much with a lot of people. Because
I think for me it might be like a cultural thing, like where I don't like that character driven stuff is fine with me. But then like you have this overall plot, and then you introduce like monsters and stuff, and
yeah.
I don't know. I just don't. I can't follow it. I mean, I can follow it mentally. It doesn't sit with me. Like,
yeah, you don't relate to it.
Yeah, and maybe it's because I didn't grow up with that stuff, or I don't know. I'm all for a monster story. Like, if I'm gonna like have a video game on Godzilla or whatever, cool. If I'm gonna have a game on an evil company that needs to be taken down, okay, that's But then you take both of them together, and it's like,
yeah. And I'm right there with you, to be honest. The reason why I play the game is because I like the aesthetics of the game and the gameplay. But the story, I'm like it's just like you said, it's very anime. I'm just laughing the entire time I'm making fun of it. But then when I got to this character-driven part where we got to like explore the character's background and go into like his psyche, I was like really invested in the story for a second. Like the entire time I was just like skipping dialogue and whatever. But then when we came to this part, I'm like, whoa, this is actually really, really interesting. You should make an entire game just about this character and whatever. But anyway, yeah. And then the last thing that I wanted to say, and we're gonna sort of wrap it up with this. I don't know if you knew, but you haven't talked about it, so I'm guessing you don't know. Do you know that Jerry Seinfeld? Am I pronouncing that right? Seinfeld. Do you know he has a special on Netflix right now?
Yes, I watched it actually.
Oh, you did? Okay, yeah, I watched it too. It's really, really good. Family friendly. It's TV PG.
PG.
I enjoyed it so much. Dude, do you enjoy it?
Yes. It's funny. I don't want to talk too much because this is a longer episode, but
yeah.
Well, what were you going to say about it?
I thought I felt a little bit nostalgic. It was like 90s comedy. I really liked it.
One thing I like about Jerry Seinfeld, out of the many things, I wish so much I could have like just like a breakfast with him, a brunch with Jerry Seinfeld, and to chat with him. Like, I would love to talk about comedy with him.
So you want to be in his show, Comedians in Cars, then?
Yeah, basically. I want to like. I feel like we could have a really interesting conversation. But anyway, he looks. I don't think he looks down on, but he thinks that comedy that relies on dirtiness, he thinks it's cheap comedy. which I really appreciate about that because he's very, very clean.
I totally agree with that statement too. It's easy to make that type of comedy. It's hard to make the type of comedy that Jerry Seinfeld does. It's harder, I think.
And he in his special, how he must have practiced, because he sequentially worded certain phrases in his comedy skit. He wasn't just like, a comedian talks and tells a story, can be funny. That can be really funny if you tell a story. That's one way of doing stand-up comedy. But he had specific ideas, and not only did he have specific ideas, he had specific wording with his ideas. How he remembered it blew my mind, really.
Yeah, totally agree with you. The timing and the writing of everything was really good. Yeah, I guess I don't really have a lot to say about it. Apart from I had a lot of fun and it made me feel nostalgic. Even the very beginning, when he jumps off the helicopter, I thought that was hilarious. And then when he comes into the studio and he spits out water a little bit, I thought that was so good. And from that moment on, I was like, okay, I'm thoroughly gonna enjoy this.
Yeah.
He had one thing. There is some stuff that I have to say about it, but man, I forgot. He had one joke where I was like, oh, I'm gonna talk about this on the podcast, and I totally forgot. I should have written it down.
He talks
sometimes, yeah.
The one thing he talks about with husbands and wives, I don't like.
My wife and I were talking about the same thing. I don't agree. I think it's a cultural difference there, but yeah.
Like he says, like he wants to tell his wife he hates her, and I think that's more comedic than anything else.
Yeah.
I never wanted to tell my wife I hate her, but
yeah.
But other than that little part, it's hilarious. It's so funny when he talks about the bathroom stalls, which he's touched on that before, like in their show and his other stand up. But there's a part where he talks about like an eyeball looking through like a peephole and like, oh my gosh, like his voice too is so like it's almost like a character in itself. His voice.
Yeah. I think he had the joke too. I don't know if but he had the joke about the U.S. mail as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
About how they should just read our mail and email it to us. That was the one joke where I was like, dude, you just revolutionized the U.S. mail and you don't even know.
And he's like, charge us another penny, since that's like a lot of money in your world apparently.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, he's hilarious. And you know what? Shout out to Jerry Seinfeld, because he is the Michael Jordan of comedy. He's like, he revolutionized every person who comes out with a TV show. It will always be compared to Seinfeld. And
that's right.
And he was, if you look at comedians in cars having coffee, it was way ahead of its time. It was on YouTube for how long? For like years on streaming. And it got picked up by Netflix. So not only has he revolutionized like, or been a part of a cultural phenomenon twice, he's also this great stand-up comedian. So it's just like, shout out to what he's doing, because so many like comedians were big in the 80s, 90s, and then they just kind of fell off, right? Like Eddie Murphy being one of them, like huge, super funny guy, and then now he doesn't really do anything. Whereas Jerry Seinfeld, he still is part of mainstream comedy.
Yeah. He still has it. Fundamentally he's just a funny guy.
Yeah.
Okay, well, everyone, that brings our show to an end. Our last episode was a little short, or somewhat short, but this one, I guess we're making up with this one. This one it's going. I think it went past the hour. It's like an hour and 10 minutes by now. So this might be our longest episode. Our last episode was our shortest episode. This one, now we give you our longest episode. You're welcome. Okay.
Thanks for joining us on Tea Talk.
Yep. Thank you all for joining us. See you in about 2 weeks.
We're set to go until the next show on tech, entertainment, and art.
TEA Talk or T-Talk is a product of TEA Talk Productions. If you like what you heard, please like and subscribe. You can also support the show on patreon.com. Link is on the description below. For questions, concerns, thoughts, and ideas, please email us at ttalkproductions@gmail.com. You can also leave us a comment on YouTube or use the DM system on Patreon or Instagram. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Google Play Music, SoundCloud, YouTube, and Patreon.